researchers, including myself and colleagues such as Kenji Hakuda from Stanford University, Robert Linquanti from WestEd, Diane August from AIR, and my colleague who designed this graphic here, Dr. Ilana Umansky, who's at the University of Oregon, have been arguing for quite some time now that in order to really understand outcomes for this full group of students, we need to look not just at what's happening for students who remain classified as English learners, but at outcomes for both current and former English learners to stabilize the subgroup and for some purposes. So here the white circles represent current English learners. Any student who enters school as an English learner in kindergarten is a current English learner, but then over time more and more students meet the criteria, as we just saw in the previous graph, and exit the EL subgroup. So the orange portions of the circle are representing former English learners. So we can see that especially at the secondary level, if we're reporting outcomes for current English learners, we're ignoring what's happening for this other group. Just another way of looking at this pattern, how it actually plays out with real data, through this partnership funded by IES and Sensor between the Oregon Department of Education and my university, OSU, we created a flag in the state data system for current and former English learners. And then this is just looking at the most recent year of data, 2015-16, and the proportion at each grade that are current English learners, that's the blue bars, the portions of the bar, and then former English learners in yellow. And while there is new migration into states, there are newcomers who arrive at the secondary grade levels. Those students make up a small proportion in Oregon and in other contexts of the full every EL group, even of the current EL group. So these current ELs are mostly students who have been classified as ELs in U.S. schools for a long period of time, and they become the majority starting in grade 6, and their relative proportion grows over time. So just to give an example of how that illuminates patterns that remain hidden, choosing one outcome to start with of graduation data, I'll show you how that looks in Oregon. So typically states report graduation rates for English learners using a scheme something like the bar graph in the bottom left of this slide. So reporting outcomes for current English learners and reporting outcomes, graduation rates for non-English learners. And we see in Oregon and in all locations around the country a large achievement gap, a large gap in those graduation rates. So in Oregon, current ELs graduate at their 4-year graduation rate is about 50% compared to a non-EL graduation rate of about 75%. So of course, Oregon's overall graduation rate of 75% or so is disturbing, and the current EL graduation rate of around 50% is deeply disturbing. But there is more to this picture, because this is telling us how students who remain classified as English learners are doing. But the non-EL bar is a combination of, as you can see with the arrows, this red bar, students who were never classified as English learners, then combined with this yellow bar of former English learners who together make this orange non-EL bar. So if instead we want to know how well schools or districts or the state are serving the full group of students who entered school as English learners, what really are best practices for students who start off school as English learners, then in some cases it can make sense to instead look at outcomes for never ELs and then outcomes for this full group of ever English learners, which combines the yellow former EL bar with the blue current EL bar. And when we look at outcomes that way, we see that the graduation rate for ever ELs is much more similar to the graduation rate for never ELs. So the gap is about 4 percentage points instead of more like 25 percentage points. And that's being driven by the fact that the former EL group is much larger than the current EL group. And former ELs are actually graduating at rates that are slightly higher than students never classified as ELs. So when we see this, it can change our narrative about not only how our students doing who start off as English learners, and then see some of the deficit perspectives that can circulate in the media or other sources about English learners, but also about how effectively schools are serving this group of students when we see that former English learners, which make up the majority of students who start off as English learners by the secondary level, are actually graduating at rates similar or higher, similar to or higher than students who were never English learners.